What if there was a way to make yourself sound not just smart, but truly captivating even when you have absolutely nothing to say? Well, my friend, there is. This is how you sound smarter than you actually are. Welcome to Alux. First up, use the pause technique. In conversations, timing is everything. The pause technique is a powerful tool that involves taking a brief pause before responding. This not only gives you a moment to gather your thoughts, but also creates an impression of thoughtfulness and intelligence. By pausing, you're seen as someone who considers their words carefully rather than rushing to respond. This technique also helps in avoiding impulsive remarks and ensures that your responses are well considered. Additionally, pausing can add emphasis to your statements, making your words more impactful. To master this technique, practice being comfortable with short silences in conversations. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words. Quote a recent study. Nothing strengthens an argument quite like data. It's hard to argue when you've got the receipts. When you quote a relevant statistic, you instantly boost your credibility. Because this obviously implies you actually read studies, or at least you stay informed. You don't need to be an expert or anything, just understand it well enough so you can briefly speak about it. That's how you move from opinion to fact, because numbers rarely lie. Learn more words. Look, it's pretty hard to sound smart when you've got the vocabulary of a 10-year-old. And you really need to be a master to be able to tell a whole story with just a few words. So instead, the fastest and most natural way to learn new words, especially in a second language, is to just read. Books, articles, studies, subtitles on a screen, whatever. When you encounter new words repeatedly, they become a part of your vocabulary. But look, okay, if the only content you consume are TikTok videos, well, your vocabulary might be capped at just internet lingo, fam. You see, a robust vocabulary allows you to express yourself more effectively, conveying your thoughts and ideas with greater clarity and nuance. It allows you to be more precise. And even something not that smart expressed in a clear way sounds really good. Regularly challenging yourself with new words keeps your mind sharp and your language skills polished. Summarize news in 3 sentences. In an age of information overload, being able to distill the essence of news stories into concise summaries is a very valuable skill. Practice summarizing the main news of the day in just 3 sentences. This exercise forces you to focus on the core aspects of the story, improving your ability to identify key points and articulate them clearly. Being able to provide quick and accurate summaries during conversations not only demonstrates that you're well-informed, but also shows your ability to communicate efficiently. And as a bonus to this, it also helps develop your critical thinking skills. Rephrase questions asked of you. Rephrasing questions before answering them serves 2 purposes, okay? First off, it buys you time to think about your response. And secondly, it ensures you're correctly understanding the question to avoid misinterpretation. This technique involves taking a question posed to you and rewording it, either for clarification or to frame your response better. So for example, if someone asks, "What do you think about the current economic policy?" you might rephrase that as, "Are you asking me about my opinion on how the current economic policy impacts inflation and employment?" This approach is also great in interviews because you can buy some time to come up with a proper answer. Use metaphors from everyday life. Metaphors are a powerful communication hack. They can turn a complex idea into something relatable and understandable. Start weaving metaphors from everyday life into your conversations. Metaphors make your language colorful and your messages more memorable. They show that you can think abstractly and creatively, connecting disparate ideas in insightful ways. It also makes you sound more interesting. However, it will backfire if you use metaphors that make no sense. Practice the rule of 3. The rule of 3 is a classic public speaking technique that involves presenting ideas in a trio. It's based on the principle that people tend to remember information more easily in threes. In your conversations, try to present your points in groups of three. For example, if you're discussing keys to a successful project, you might say it requires planning, execution, and evaluation. This structure is simple yet powerful, making your communication clearer and more persuasive. So use this structure whenever you can. It'll instantly make you sound more organized. Refer to historical events. Referencing historical events during discussions can significantly bolster your arguments. It demonstrates a depth of knowledge and a broader understanding of how the world works. However, it's crucial to use this tactfully and accurately. Brush up on history, especially relating to your field of interest or relevant global events. When you draw parallels between past events and current situations, it shows you're not just focused on the surface, but understand the underlying patterns and lessons of history. And this also works when history is irrelevant. When you say, historically this happened this way, but now I don't know, it makes you sound like you're just not up to date instead of completely clueless. Implement the yes and technique. The yes and technique is an improvisational tool that encourages positive dialogue and open-mindedness. So instead of shutting down ideas or immediately presenting a counter-argument, first acknowledge what's been said with a yes, and then build upon that with an and. For example, if someone shares an idea in a meeting, respond with, yes, and we could also consider whatever. This is a great way to disagree with someone without actually disagreeing with them and sounding smart in the process. Share a relevant source of information. You can introduce new perspectives in a conversation by mentioning something you heard in a podcast, a talk, or that you read in an article. You don't have to agree or even completely understand it, but the fact that you mention it makes you look like you go beyond headlines and breadcrumbs. Saying something like, I was listening to this podcast the other day and I heard this. What do you think about it? Opens up the door for some great conversation. Use analogies to explain concepts. Analogies are a powerful tool to simplify and clarify complex ideas. They work by drawing a parallel between a familiar concept and an unfamiliar one, making the latter easier to understand, like comparing the layers of Earth's atmosphere to the layers of an onion. Analogies have this way of making you sound smart by default. It gives you a teacher vibe, if you will. And speaking of teaching, apply the ELI5 method. ELI5, or ELI5, is short for Explain Like I'm 5. It's a technique that involves breaking down complicated ideas into simple, understandable terms. It's a skill that showcases your deep understanding of a subject and your ability to communicate it in an accessible manner. To practice this, take a complex concept and think about how you would explain it to a child. This requires you to strip the idea down to its basics, avoiding jargon and using simple language. If you've managed to summarize news in 3 sentences, well, this should be pretty straightforward. Introduce a contrarian viewpoint. Now, this doesn't mean disagreeing just for the sake of arguing, but challenge the status quo a little bit. It demonstrates you're not just going with the flow, but are capable of independent and critical thinking. You see, oftentimes, there are more ways to look at the same problem, and even just acknowledging that can make you sound smarter. What if things are not the way they are? What if there's something you missed? These are simple questions you can ask to stimulate a more in-depth discussion. Name drop books intelligently. Referencing books that you've read, especially those relevant to the topic of discussion, can significantly boost how smart you sound. It shows that you invest time in expanding your knowledge and are well informed. However, the key to do this is to do it subtly and appropriately. The aim is to add value to the conversation, not just showcase your reading list. When you mention a book, also include a brief insight or idea from it that is pertinent to the topic at hand. And lastly, utilize the Socratic questioning technique. The Socratic method involves asking a series of thoughtful questions to stimulate critical thinking and draw out ideas and underlying presumptions. It's a powerful way to engage in conversations that delves deeper into the subject matter. So ask these kinds of questions. What do you mean by that? Why do you think that's true? How did we arrive at that conclusion? What was the point of this question? What you're essentially doing here is making things more clear and looking smarter in the process. And of course, for sticking with us until the end, here's the bonus we owe you. There's this TED Talk from a couple of years ago called How to Sound Smart in Your TED Talk. Now, we're not going to spoil it for you should go check it out yourself, but we'll leave you with this little tidbit. Even when you have absolutely nothing to say, nothing to add to the conversation, no insights, no data or numbers or anything like that, you can still sound interesting and smart. We'll see you back here next time, Aluxer. Until then, take care, my friend.